And these can be expensive mistakes too. If you get audited, and frankly, you know, most of my clients get audited unless they are big organizations with lots of, you know, with good full-time HR staff, or they've been audited in the past and then they kind of fix their problems. You know, there's lots of different ways to make mistakes under these laws. And they can get real expensive if you have to go back and pay overtime, because you know what? Who's keeping track of the hours that your exempt employees are working? No one. That's why they're exempt, right?
Well, we do.
You do keep track?
We do.
Some people do. That you would be the exception. And that, if you ever get audited and you find out that you mischaracterized somebody, you're way ahead of the game. Because what normally happens is if they come in and they're going to recharacterize somebody as non-exempt, at that point memories differ greatly as to how much overtime was worked. And guess who the Department of Labor is normally going to side with? Right. The employee, because it's the employer's obligation to keep those records. So this can be a big gotcha. Hours worked under the wage and hour laws can be a big gotcha too. I don't know, it was a big banner headline in the Argus Leader a couple years ago when Avera, as a system, got tagged because they weren't paying employees proper break time. Well, if you really drill down into that, it was just pennies per employee is what happened. But what happened was there's a lot of payroll software, a lot of timekeeping software out there that will just automatically deduct 30 minutes from for lunch. They'll just assume everybody took a 30-minute lunch, or they will round up to 30 minutes. But that's what happened to Avera. Their software automatically assumed everybody was taking a 30-minute lunch, and the Department of Labor says if somebody comes back at 25 minutes and didn't take the full 30-minute lunch, then you owe them pay for the whole time. Because, you know, breaks of less than, you know, that's why you have to pay them for coffee breaks. 15-minute breaks in the morning and the afternoon, those are paid, right? Well, the Department of Labor says that any break that's less than 30 minutes, and you won't find this really exactly in their regulations, but that's their position. If it's less than 30 minutes, you have to pay for it. And that's what Avera had to go back and do, is figure out all these employees and, you know, who was coming back early. And it's frankly very difficult for employers because, you know what? A lot of employees, they got a lot of work to do. They have somewhere to be after work, so they don't want to be staying there after, you know, from 5 to 5:30. They'd rather just come back quick from lunch and get going on it. And how do employers really enforce that? Well, it's hard. You have to kind of stay on top of it and make sure. You can have policies that tell people they have to do it, and then you have to discipline them if they don't follow that policy. There are a lot of issues like that in the wage and hour world. You know, how much do I have to pay for work-related training? When do I have to pay? When is it on the employee's dime? And those rules are not real intuitive either. So if you've got employees that you're sending off to training, they're traveling for you, if you have them on call, all of those kinds of things are difficult issues and can trip people up. Retirement and health benefit plans. I do a lot of work with employee benefits. It's kind of where I started, and then I branched out into general employment law. But this last year in particular, there's another attorney in our office that does a lot of this work, and he spent almost the whole year just working on retirement plan issues. It used to be there was nothing to do. If you screwed up your retirement plan, you just stuck your head in the sand and hoped you didn't get audited. And generally that worked for you because there wasn't a lot of money being spent on audits. Now the Department of Labor and the IRS have what they call correction programs. So it's basically like a get out of jail almost free program. If you find the mistake and you correct it in a timely manner, you can do it without even telling anybody. You just document that you did it. They've got a whole big long procedure with a lot of examples about what you're supposed to do if you did it incorrectly. And if it's too big a mistake or you didn't catch it quick enough or something, you can go into them they'll give you a written get out of jail almost free thing. You have to pay some money to do that. The corrections, though, can be very expensive. And this is another area where, frankly, I'm almost of the firm belief that there's hardly any retirement plans in the United States that don't have some administrative error in running them, because they're just way complicated. And frankly, brokers, bless their heart, they know how to invest money for you, but they kind of get into retirement plans because they say they're going to do the investment for you, but they don't get paid to really understand the administration of it either. And so you need to make sure that you've got somebody helping you with your retirement plan that you trust, or that you have a really simple, no-brainer kind of, simple IRA or something that you really can't screw up on. But what you really need to make sure is, are you following the written terms of your plan? I had a client call me on December 31st this year. Not a client, it was somebody I'd never worked with in the past, but called because their auditor had been in and they realized that they had started paying bonuses to their employees a couple of years ago to try to boost production and stuff, which was really working for them. So their employees were getting monthly bonuses because their production was way up. But they just didn't think, it never occurred to them that they had to allow people to make deferrals out of those bonuses, or that those bonuses would be subject to match. They just ignored the bonuses for purposes of their retirement plan, which was clearly not what their plan document said. Plan document said compensation is everything that shows up in your W-2, and so we're in the process of trying to help them fix that now. And the good thing is that they can fix it. The bad thing is it's going to cost them some money. And the big Department of Labor hot button that you have to be careful about is you have to make sure that you're timely depositing deferrals from your employees. A lot of people used to not do it for a month or longer. They get the deferrals out of the paychecks, and then just because it was administratively easier or whatever, that went in once a month or maybe even later than that. And the Department of Labor says you have to get it in as quickly as you can. And so if you're able to deposit payroll taxes in 3 days, you should be able to get deferrals deposited in 3 days. And every Department of Labor audit you're going to get is going to focus on that. All your other benefits need to have some attention paid to them as well. Healthcare reform, everybody's hearing about that. I'm not going to beat that drum because that's all day long. We could talk about healthcare reform. But all of your plans, you need to make sure that you're handling, if you're administering your own cafeteria plan, your own flex plan, and you're getting information, that you're handling that confidentially and complying with all the HIPAA requirements. Flex plans should have been updated for some recent law changes in the last couple of years. So if you haven't looked at your flex plan because you got it from Aflac or somebody 10 years ago and you haven't done anything with it, you need to pay some attention to it. If you've got non-qualified deferred comp plans, if you give anybody, you promise anybody compensation that you're not paying to them this year, you need to make sure that's in compliance with Code Section 409A, which was a new code section a couple of years ago, dramatically changed how and when you can pay deferred comp to folks, and made life a lot more complicated for employers. All right, termination practices, I alluded to this earlier, but you need to make sure this is, before you terminate somebody, do your due diligence. If you're going to call your lawyer at 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, make sure you've looked at their personnel file before you call. Do I have documentation that would allow me to overcome any kind of claim for discrimination or any kind of claim for any kind of illegal termination? That is the best thing you can do to protect yourself. Think about it. Do I want to offer severance? Do I want to get a separation agreement and just be done with this person and get them to waive any claims they might have against us? Do we have a practice of doing that in the past? What am I going to do about references? Do I have a standard policy that I just don't give anybody? I just verify that they worked here, their date of employment, their job title, or am I going to give this person a reference? And if so, you should agree upon what that's going to look like beforehand. Think through unemployment benefits. Am I going to have to pay unemployment benefits? Am I going to try to say I had just cause? to terminate them and there was some kind of misconduct involved. Think through all those kind of things and how you're going to handle it. So, kind of went through my top 10. I have some just kind of final pieces of advice for you guys. And this a little bit is preaching to the choir, because you guys are all here. So obviously, you're conscientious enough to try to keep up with some of these laws. But if you've got supervisors out there at work, take some time to do some training with them. Take some time so they understand, because they're your eyes and ears out there for all kinds of, the front lines of employment issues and where they rise. And so take some time to train them. You can't, you can spend too much time training, but I don't really know anybody that does. And it's something that does pay off in the long run. And then the last one, this is my favorite one, call your local employment lawyer early and often. So thank you guys for coming today.